first, before we get into how hiring changes during a recession. If you're just joining us, you'll see the Q&A function here for Zoom. That's where we'll be taking questions throughout. So you do not have to wait for the end of the session. Drop in those questions. I will be following them closely. We do 10-minute breaks between all our sessions. So we'll end this one at about 11:45, 11:50 or so to make sure you can get that break before our noon session. All the sessions are being recorded. We will be publishing recaps on Technically. And this is our first virtual conference. We've done lots of webinars, lots of short conversations. It's our first day-long virtual conference. So when we send you your post-event survey, please fill it out. Tell us what we were bad at, what we were good at. And of course, share on social using PTW20, because this is normally part of Philly Tech Week, though the 10th annual will take place in the fall. But we still will be using Intro 20, as this is Technically's introduced conference, but in virtual format. So that's the basics. Let's meet who the heck we're talking to. Why don't we go with who are you, where do you work, and where you're broadcasting from? Christina, do you want to start us off? And I'll drop everyone's names in the chat for everybody. But Christina, start us off. Oh, Christina may not have made it all over yet from our green room. We're pivoting. Jenna, who the heck?
Hello, I did make it.
Okay, give us.
Hi, my name is Jenna Fry. I'm the VP of Operations for Whitebox. I'm broadcasting today from our warehouse in Baltimore, located in Dundalk. We also have locations in Memphis and North Las Vegas, but shout out to the Baltimore location today.
Joe, who the heck are you? Where are you broadcasting from? What do you do?
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Gomez. I'm Talent Acquisition Manager for Guru Technologies based in Philadelphia. I'm talking to you today from our back shared office, hiding from my kids in sunny Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, a little bit outside of Philadelphia.
Christina, you've made it over from the dark side. We're in a green room.
Hello, I did.
Where are you coming from?
A little longer journey. Thank you, people.
So tell us, who are you and what do you do and where are you coming from?
Certainly. Christina Molson, VP of People at Fiscal Note in Washington, D.C. Today, I'm calling you from Oakton, right outside of D.C., my home, with children and dogs closed outside of this room. Pardon if they do barge in at some point.
And who else we got here? We got Mo.
Chris, hi. I'm Maulam, the head of talent at LTSC. Broadcasting from Maryland. I also have children and dogs on the other side of that door. So if they come in, just a heads up.
But the menagerie of ferns makes up for Rachel.
Yes, hi, I'm Rachel Cargas, and I am head of talent acquisition at Pi Insurance. We're an insurtech company with offices in DC and Denver. And I'm actually out of our Denver office today in my attic, and it's 9 a.m. here in Denver. So that means my kids are going to be up any minute complaining and whining. So the door's closed.
That's amazing. So this conversation is about hiring during a recession. That's the aim here to get into. We have to start with the elephant in the room, though. Though recessions will happen every few years for the history of economies, we happen to be dealing with one that is caused by a pandemic. So I wonder if we could first start about what feels like particularly universal about working at a company that's hiring in a recession, and what is a little bit different right now. Love voices from all of you. Christina, just kind of arbitrarily to jump us in. What is true about hiring in a recession always? What's a little bit weird about doing it in a pandemic?
Certainly. I'd say to start off with, really sticking with the basics, the fundamentals, right? Now more than ever is the time to kind of really drill down and on our values and what really drives you, right? In terms of how we want to interview, the type of talent we're looking for, what the entire candidate experience feels like, the needs of the hiring manager and the team. So I think a lot of it's going to reinforce like the basics, almost kind of like return to the basics, right? And then in terms of like what's different, again, even with the basics, take nothing for granted, right? You know, we've thought about aspects like, oh, I guess that's not always obvious when we do a lot of video calls typically, but to do your group interview calls, a little different. to do your product demonstrations, a little different, right? So to really try to examine each step and think about it differently from that perspective. And of course, too, in some cases, unfortunately, because of a recession, we have more applicants, unfortunately, who've recently lost a position in some cases, right? And an empathy along that line, a volume along that line. And we've noticed that sometimes people, don't want to leave where they are, right? They're like, I'm scared, right? So some people want to hunker down, right? And at the same time, there's also a flight to application. So we're seeing a lot of mixed things. So we're just, again, turning back to a lot of the values and the fundamentals to kind of stay the course and think about those parts.
Other voices, what resonated there? What stood out to you guys, Rachel?
Yeah, one thing that I would say is we have this extra layer of isolation and fear of a pandemic. And so I think that puts an extra layer of stress, not only on applicants, but also on our own team members who are part of the interview panel. And I think just kind of having an awareness of when people are feeling particularly stressed, they tend to kind of do flight or fight responses. And so things like our unconscious bias can really raise to the surface because we're in survival mode. So trying to be a bit more intentional about, as was just mentioned, our values, sticking to some of the fundamentals like diversity and inclusion, and remembering that those are still really important to us as we face real threats.
That's great. We're going to throw up a poll question here in a moment that'll get at this idea of how much has this present moment changed. But I wonder if in the meantime, other thoughts on that concept of what seems very familiar about hiring a recession, those who were active during the Great Recession, what seems unique? I'm not sure if Mo, Joe, or Jen.
Yeah, I'll pitch in a little bit if you don't mind. I think the values thing and making sure that we're continuously dedicated to our mission and looking for the right people to do the roles is incredibly important. I think all of us probably are going to reiterate that message. But one thing that I think is very unique for us right now, maybe common in recessions, but extra at the forefront of the discussion at the moment, is every industry is being hit in really different ways at the moment. So while in a recession, you may see more people looking for, career switches or looking to do something different and learn a new skill, I think it's really important right now for companies like, for example, mine, that are seeing a very, we're hiring more, to answer the poll question. But we understand that some of the people that are coming to us for seasonal work are not necessarily looking to make this career switch forever. So we're looking to be super flexible with our policies and to provide opportunities that may be short term, right? It's an understanding for both the hiring team and the candidate. Hey, they're looking for something to do to help get them through this time, make some money, learn a new skill, and potentially that'll be a long-term switch, but it's not something that they may be committed to long-term. And I think both of us are looking to make sure that it's a good fit for the short term. And we are able to help out in the community at this time, bring people in from industries like the restaurant industry or personal training and fitness, things that might be a little bit different, help them out and help us out at the same time. And I think that's been a really specifically different thing during the pandemic versus just a normal recession.
I see attendee Jesse Brooks just dropped in the comments that their company hiring lots, maybe more on sales, but other roles they've pulled back on. I wonder if a panelist had similar experience, or has it juggled what types of hiring you're doing? Let me sense there, and then we'll talk about our poll results.
So, if I may, it hasn't shifted the type of hiring we're doing, but to actually pivot on and add more to what Jenna stated, for us, we've actually built out an apprenticeship program and actually found creative ways to bring folks on. We do not yet have an intern program, but given the global pandemic, given the fact that there are larger amounts of underrepresented talent that are not in internships currently, we've partnered with programs like the New Craft Intern Program so that we can allow for remote internships and keep folks employed. In terms of what's similar, I think the last recession, if you think about 10 years ago, we had a dramatic increase in unemployment, and that led to a higher addressable market of talent, and that talent increased overall hiring pipelines. What we discovered, if you look back at the data, is that although we had more candidates top of funnel, it increased the amount of time it took to hire. What's different is that now we have technology. We have things that we can put on top of funnel, and the recruiting process is a bit more sophisticated. And like Jenna said, organizations are shifting to allow individuals to find work. Why? Because this is a global pandemic, and it's affecting us in so many different ways, and that so many industries are not functioning right now. And in order for their people to actually continue working and living, there is a revenue stream that needs to be increased. So I think for companies that are continuously growing, especially now that are poised to grow, I think it's more of a duty to do what you can to not only take care of your people, but also take care of the community and the greater environment that you exist in.
I want to call out our poll results to keep the conversation going. I think interesting, 40%, we have 178 people in listening in right now, 40% in a hiring freeze. I think probably interesting or maybe very telling about that is, though the next biggest number, nearly a third, are doing less hiring, the biggest chunk are people who are like paused. I think that feels very of the moment, that we're not quite sure what we're all waiting for. I wonder if that resonates with any of you. Joe, has the shift changed? Has the hiring shift changed? Or what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, our hiring has definitely changed. We had a pretty robust hiring plan a couple months ago that we were going to start working on, and now it's really just tied back more into kind of a wait and see, but it's also more like metrics driven as well. Like, we want to see how our customers and potential customers are being affected by anything before we really decide what we need to run ahead and do. If we were going to hire a handful of engineers before, why were we going to do that? And, we're going to be more pragmatic about what we really need them to do as far as like shifting in our internal teams and things like that, maybe to bridge some of those gaps for the meantime, just until there's a little bit more stability, because we work with such a wide variety of customers. Obviously, folks in hospitality, they're having a really hard time right now, even if they're Guru users. And then we have other people that are just blowing up right now too. So until we kind of get like a more like neutral ground or a better feel about everything, we're just going to really focus our hiring on critical gaps that we have within our workforce right now, and just be a little more just pragmatic about how we approach what our openings are going to be. But a short answer to your question, we were going to hire dozens of people this year, and now we might hire a dozen, right? But that's also just kind of coming from not wanting to run too far ahead without having all the information in front of us before we do that. So.
And I want to point, this is going to be relevant for all of you intentionally. You guys represent different stages or different companies. Guru is 160-ish employees, raised a $30 million Series C just a few weeks ago, led by a sale partners. It's telling that a lot of you are in different places or stages, but the overwhelming narrative of like, what's about to happen? Is this V-shaped recovery, or are we in the Nike symbol? Is that resonating for other folks? Is it like we just created a whole lot of caution, which is just grinds, it just slows all the gears? Is that familiar for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. We were on the pace to add over 100, we're about 160 today, and we had planned to end 2020 at 280. We're probably looking at hiring 20 people this year. And one of the things that we're doing, because I noticed you asked the question about what parts of the organization are they impacted? Pi specifically works with small businesses. So you can imagine our customers are deeply impacted by what's happening with the pandemic. So there are pockets of our organization that have really been impacted. Inside sales is one of them, and negatively impacted, right? We don't get as many leads right now. But our customer care organization is getting inundated with calls from our customers. And so we've been able to do some internal shifts as well of kind of repurposing some roles and people in order to retain them. And then I would say, just to echo what Joe said, very intentional about what roles we will fill. So really understanding what problem that role was meant to solve and how it will contribute to the overall strategy of the company. But I think we're probably, we're at Series B. We were looking to raise Series C this year, and I think that has probably been pushed off a little bit as well, and that our hiring will be more cautious until that happens. 2021 is my guess.
Yes, I did the classic I was muted thing.
Yeah.
I'm just that guy now. Calling out folks that in the Q&A functions where we're taking questions, I'll keep rolling out them. We had one, given the pause nature we're in, someone said, what's the sense of onboarding new hires while remote? I guess there's an embedded logic there of, will we not be remote forever? Should we pause? What are folks thinking? Are anyone rolling out remote hiring processes, or is that just terrifying and that's part of why you're slowing? Or put another way, are any of you rolling out new remote hiring processes?
I don't mind speaking up on that one. So I think Whitebox is in a really interesting position. We offer e-commerce services, which means in this pandemic, we've seen probably a really significant increase in business, which is driven by a lot of changes in the cultural buying patterns that we see, right? More and more people at home turning to that e-commerce platform as a way to have, contactless delivery. What that means for us is, as we mentioned in the beginning, like our values have not changed, but it's actually put a lot of pressure on us to, expedite our hiring plans and bring on actually more people a little bit earlier than we probably would have planned to. We raised our Series A last year and looking at, what our timeline looks like for a Series B. But as more and more, clients are coming to us and saying like, hey, we're facing logistics and supply chain troubles, that puts pressure on us to, hire and develop our warehouse, but also our sales team and our account management team and our tech team as we develop our own resources. So we have rolled out a virtual hiring process, and we are looking at ways like how do you onboard someone from afar where they can't come in, they can't touch the things that you do, they can't interact, right, and read off that body language or read off like listening to people ask questions around you. That's very difficult. And what we found with like the people that we're starting to practice this onboarding with is it obviously extends the onboarding ramp, right? More people that we need to make sure they get support. It means more touches, more check-ins. We need to make sure that we get people one-on-one having like just open conversation sessions, because they don't get the opportunity to ask that throughout the regular workday, or overhear someone in the lunchroom asking that question and then like kind of building off that. So what we are committed to here, and I'm sure my peers will say the same, the quality of onboarding cannot change, but the length of time that we permit someone to do that, or the opportunities we give them, hopefully when this transition ends, like those do need to change. And it may mean we restructure the timing of when we do certain things, like when we bring them into the warehouse. Like we're bringing no one in right now. But if we would typically commit a week for someone to work in our warehouses to learn our processes, we need to do that. We just may do that at 3, 6, 9 months into their hiring plan. So, super committed to the long-term development of the talent we bring in, but we do have to restructure the manner in which we bring them on and the intentional ways that we have conversations with them in those first couple of weeks, months along the way.
I think there's also, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please, Rachel.
I was going to say there's also kind of the softer element of that. I actually onboarded a recruiter. She started the Monday after we all went remote. And I think part of it is kind of that feeling connected to the organization and the people that you're working with. I know our company, as a culture, we tend to really promote in-office work for the most part. And because we really believe we get a lot out of that personal interaction, whether it's having lunch, just being able to look over your shoulder, make a joke, do a happy hour, whatever it might be. And that piece is missing right now. And so trying to be very intentional on my recruiter's first day, we all ordered lunch and sat and had lunch together over Zoom. And just trying to put in those more personal touch points and get a little bit more trying to build that connection to the culture and to the people as well.
That's,
oh,
if I may. Thank you, Chris. So similar to Jen and Rachel, we have added those aspects of connection in our onboarding session. Actually, during my interview process at LTSE, I actually only went in once, and it just so happens that I was in San Francisco for this conversation. So we are a co-located team, both in New York and as well as San Francisco. So we've had elements of remote. And although it wasn't explicitly stated, this organization with our regulations, with Slack, with how we work, we were more or less a remote first culture. So with onboarding, the complexities that Jenna and Rachel mentioned of actually connectedness, getting to know the people that you're working with are the same ones that we face. And we've gone about it with incredible intentionality by scheduling specific chats with folks throughout their onboarding weeks so that they can connect with various members of the team, folks that they may not connect with. We have regular monthly lunches where you pair up with various individuals. We have other programs, virtual canteens, as well as workout sessions. My daughters and I usually do a yoga or a movement class. It's a great way for us all to connect, and it's something that's led by our organization. So specifically on onboarding, although we haven't rolled out a new process, we have been incredibly intentional about adding the elements of the old process that we receive feedback on that individuals valued into this process through scheduling and using the video tools that were available to us.
Throw a point here in the mix. Sabrina, in the Q&A function, for the 188 of you so listening in, we are using the Q&A function to take questions. Sabrina asked the question of, during the Great Recession, we saw a rise of contract workers. There was a short-term logic of don't take on that full-time head count. Are any of you seeing that shift either for your own companies or more broadly? Are we watching a rise of contract workers? Will gig economy grow further? Any experiences there, or you still feel full-time W-2 headcount is where you're growing?
So we're growing full-time and contract, if I may. However, my colleague put out an article a few weeks back about what to do as an alternative to layoffs, and it talks about ways that you can staff your organization and keep people employed and also bring on additional talent. So in terms of the contract work, we have a long-term focus in the sense that LTSC, the Long-Term Stock Exchange, is predicated on a long-term vision, which means that there is a conservative nature of funding, ensuring that you have years of funding for your team rather than just merely months. So in that case, we're advocating and doing it ourselves by hiring individuals in an apprenticeship and contractor base that we can leverage to support certain things without dramatically increasing our headcount. And in doing so, I believe that we are doing the same thing that many other organizations are doing. So contract work, to put it succinctly, is something that I think is going to increase, given the technology, given the tools, and given the pause nature of where other organizations are in terms of seeing what's going to play out.
Yeah. I'm sure others may have thoughts on that, but I want to spend a good chunk of time on the remote hiring experience, which is obviously one thing that is defining this moment in time. But we just have a ton of questions, both on comments and the Q&A, about either entry-level internship programs. Basically, at the very beginning, we know one of the enduring stories of the Great Recession is how that just smushed all of those entry-level hiring. Of the roles you guys are still hiring for, is it safe for me to assume that they are more mid-level and higher, and the entry level is getting squished? Is that fair, true, or otherwise? And this might be ranging across your companies. It's probably the point. You might not all agree. So I'd love voices. Rachel, I saw some nodding. Is that, you have to unmute yourself and tell me?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We actually didn't have, we were hiring so fast that we actually had deprioritized an internship program for 2020. I'm only 5 months into my job here, and so we deprioritized that. And as we look at what roles we're continuing to hire, they are more seasoned technical roles, product roles, as opposed to the inside sales roles that we were hiring before. So it's definitely had an impact in that direction.
Yeah. Others, internship programs changing, entry-level hiring changing?
I can jump in real quick, Chris. Yeah. We loved our internship program we had going at Guru the past couple summers, and unfortunately, painfully, we had to kind of pull back from that this year. And it's only just because of an experience thing. We just don't think it's, we don't want to hurt students that have been working so hard. They want this opportunity to learn from seasoned engineers and stuff. It's painful, but at the same time, it's like, how can we have someone with no real work experience like paired up with these people and what that's going to be like for them. And, so we just decided just in the climate, it's just better just to maybe focus and regroup on that in like the fall and maybe put it across more of our teams, like maybe do like a full on marketing intern too, as, and just see what else is out there. But that was tough for us. And in regards to normal positions we're going to be hiring for, Guru has had a bunch of entry-level type roles, a lot of ways to get your foot in the door with us previously, but I think for right now, looking at the critical gap roles, they're definitely going to be a little more seasoned, like people that can definitely come in and take the reins quickly in a more managerial aspect right now.
Jenna, Whitebox is different. Is your experience different?
Yeah, Whitebox is different. I think, we had a very, very limited intern class last year, and we were looking to do something very similar this year. We aren't at the point where we had developed, I won't say like a very large, robust intern program. We're absolutely looking to do that. I think within all of the different organizations that we have, like the answer is a little bit different. So within our tech organization, we're growing so fast. So it's not like an absolute no. We're not looking for entry levels. It's kind of like we need people who are talented, and we're open to a lot of opportunities there. I think within our like warehousing team and like our, operations support programs, it's a similar thing. Like we're looking for people that are the right fit. Like I said earlier, the values that match and like want to grow with the company. So for us, that's a lot of openings in a lot of different levels. There may be some differences as we hire within our sales organization or our account management team in those spaces, perhaps a little bit more experienced. But we're definitely not cutting out the opportunities to bring in some great people. Our interns from last year are coming back full time. Really excited about them. So that's been really good to see like kind of that continued growth. But it's just super important for us to keep our options open. And I think, one of the things that has been really interesting for me as I've been hiring in the last couple of weeks has been just like, as people come and like I mentioned earlier, like career changers, like people are coming to us and saying like, I don't have a lot of experience doing the things you're talking about, but here are the skills I do have, and here's how they're relevant. And in that interview process, although it's remote and like sometimes a little bit, like awkward when you're speaking over each other, there's a really interesting way for people who study what you like, the openings you do have. If they come prepared and they have a lot of like, let me tell you why I'm a good fit for this role, it's been really educational for me to find people from really different backgrounds that have very important skills that I think are good for the growth position that Whitebox is in, right? And like, they might not have ever worked on a pallet jack or been out on a warehouse floor, or they don't understand necessarily what our tech looks like, but they've, we had someone that recently joined us that had a math teaching background that was able to come in and had some software skills, but was able to use that logic to kind of come up really quickly. So I think for us, it's just been about looking, candidates looking something that's new and different, and us being able to, say, this is what we're looking for our values and our theory. How can you help us understand how these two things connect? And then that makes a good fit for us.
I want to push on this topic because we got a few comments. I'd say some takeaways there for those, the 180 or so of you listening here. Career changers, it can be an opportunity for you if you want to get back in an industry or not. You have to re-articulate, though, what and why your experience can translate at the experience level you want. Entry-level folks, this might be a tough environment. The lesson from the Great Recession is this is when entrepreneurship comes in. You have to try something new, so that way 3 years from now when you're going back to apply for Guru as an example, you need to articulate why you used this time differently. If that becomes a company of yours or it becomes an experience you take on. I do want to turn to the remote. Oh yeah, Christina, you want to jump in?
No, if you don't mind, on that point of contract and career change and things, I think it's a really good opportunity on occasion. At first it may be, challenging and stressful, but, if you're thinking about a new career path, or you want to try something out new, or you're just new to, you're just early in your career, in fact, contract and freelance work can be the way to get into it, right? You get to try it out. Right? You get to get your foot in the door, where ultimately maybe you're looking for a full-time position, but maybe it's not there, right? And maybe you want to try it out, and maybe they want to try you out, right? At the same time, sometimes it's hard to be very competitive for a full-time ongoing position, but maybe it's a little bit easier to kind of get a shot, right, with some freelance or contract work. I think that's also much different than, a decade or so ago during the recession, where it really has been the rise of gig work, right? And even people thinking about it as not just being like in a back of the pile kind of alternative, but in fact can actually be a strategic part of your career plan, So, I do think it now more than ever is kind of challenging our own assumptions sometimes, right? And you just never know, giving it a shot. Here at Fiscal Note, we did dial back our summer internships largely because of just the time of when this all started happening, just the uncertainty. We will be dialing up more. We do have a number of entry level and early career positions, particularly for our SDR group. And we're absolutely keeping those open. And it's not uncommon for SDRs after they've been here for a while to be promoted internally or transferring. So keeping that so employers are thinking about, how do we keep kind of our talent coming in and growing on the inside. And then also from a individual career management standpoint, think about trying a different industry. Think about trying a different full-time position or contractor freelance.
That's fantastic, Christine. I want to spend a good chunk of our time here. We have about 15 minutes left, and folks, do keep dropping the questions in the Q&A function. I'll be pulling those out, but I want to spend a bulk of time here on remote hiring. Many of you may already have done elements of this. It's, of course, technology companies often do have those remote workers, but pretty quickly this became the way, not a way that we do things. I want to start with what's something that each of you are proud of, either in the candidate experience, the hiring process, even the job marketing platform. Give me something that you are proud that you guys are doing that you think others might be able to take. Let's steal and trade ideas. What's something explicit you're doing well that others can take on? Rachel, you want to start us off?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're taking this time where hiring has unfortunately slowed, and we are doing interview training across the entire organization. And I think that is a value add to everybody who gets to go through it, as well as our company. And one of the things that we're focusing on is the importance of the candidate experience and having hiring managers really understand their role in contributing to that, understanding the employee value proposition and being able to articulate that. And really, not being able to come in and see the office. It's really important that all of our hiring or all of our interviewers are able to articulate and talk about culture and values. We're doing more, I would say, peer interviews as well, so that people can have an opportunity to speak with the people that they're working with across the organization and get a sense of who we are inside our four walls. What is it like to come into Pi? What how do we live our values? What is the culture like? And so I think trying to bring that to life more intentionally now that it's all remote, an add and something that we will take to the future.
That's great. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick names. Christina, what's something that you guys are you're proud of at Fiscal Note that you guys have done well in the remote process?
I think it's a hard one. We've tried to really look at it from a number of different angles. I'd say that the recruiting team and all the interviewers mobilized pretty quickly to be able to go all remote or remote first, right? We've done some video calls in the past, but again, not taking anything for granted. I think some of the things that the team did was they do more prep of the candidate and not taking for granted that they do in fact have the setup, that how nervous they may be to be making all their first rapport and introductions via Zoom or Google Hangout or whatever they're doing, right? And not taking that for granted and making it a safe place to say, hey, look, you may already do this all the time. You may already live on Zoom, but this is an interview. Stakes are higher, right? People get a little bit more nervous sometimes. And letting it know, like, we want to see your personality. You don't have to hide something in the background and have, I've seen some instructions that tell you, like, put like a big white sheet in the back, like, so you can't even like, or like a neutral blue background. Just, no, we want to see that. It's fine. Don't apologize for yourself. We want the whole person, right? So some of it is just, providing instructions, so to speak, right? Just being very clear about kind of the instructions of it. And then also inviting people to kind of just be themselves, and it's a safe place, and that we too are going to be vulnerable during this.
You heard that, everyone. Christina's telling me I did not have to carry my fig tree up from my bedroom this morning. I could have left my messy self. Thank you, Christina. Jenna, Mo, Joe, yeah, Jenna, shoot me. What's something you guys are doing well that you like at Whitebox?
Yeah, I think what's super cool about Whitebox, and so previous to Whitebox, I came from Amazon, and so like my understanding of the interview process, I've done a ton of them in my career. what I like about what Whitebox does that's different from where I've been before is I like the way that we divide and conquer like what we're going to talk about in the interviews. We spend a lot more time today, in my opinion, prepping for how we're going to attack the different parts of the role that are important in the interview, right? So if we were doing this in person, you know, there's a little bit more dynamic to it for sure, but we also, right, are not necessarily going to be as structured in how we plan and approach it. So what I think has been really good is we've identified like 4 key sections of all roles that we're going to look for: problem solving, innovation, customer service, right? And those are different for every role, but like how we ask questions within those areas. And then we do a really nice job, I think, of trying to make sure that afterwards when we debrief, we speak to all of those parts and how people perform in that specific area. And then we can make a more well-rounded decision about whether or not a candidate fits. And it's not necessarily a one-off interview process that may or may not go well. It's about understanding the candidate a little bit more well-rounded, and it allows us to see some different aspects of their, you know, history, background, personal life, whatever, that they choose to share with us in that interview process. So I think the ability to see things from, you know, 3 or 4 different perspectives, and then making sure that the people doing the interviews are understand the role that we're hiring for, it allows like a really nice balance of what the role is, what the candidate gets to hear about from all the different people within the different areas, and then as well as understand their experience for their fit.
Jen, I love that. It sounds like that theory of hire for strengths, don't just find the least fewest weaknesses. Also, shout out to Chino, who dropped a comment that I think is right on, that when we're in a hiring freeze, we do need more opportunities to be giving people the comfort and confidence in trying something entrepreneurial, even if it's a small scale project. Chino, I think that's a great comment. Joe, you know, what's something that Guru's done well in moving to the remote hiring process?
Well, we were fortunate. I mean, towards the end of last year, we kind of shifted towards looking for some more remote employees, particularly in our software engineering teams, like looking for those more senior folks that are out there. So the engineering team in particular has had some experience as far as, you know, what that's like. You know, some things that we do to make sure we're taking advantage of that time is making sure, you know, we might over communicate, which is totally fine. And that can be an extra sheet that we have, kind of a questionnaire that the hiring manager splits out. That's like, hey, this is what hey, Bobby and Toby, this is what I want you to focus on for this call. We do have scorecards built up in Greenhouse as well that we can, you know, send specific questions or have people categorize them. But even so, we like that extra piece of paper, even though it's a little bit redundant. You can put your real thoughts on there. Beyond that as well, the communication is awesome that we do around like Slack and things like that. So we can do real-time updates or anything like that from the hiring manager as the interviews are taking place or anything like that is concerned. And kind of spinning that back to how we handle the remote work is really just about being a little bit, maybe a little bit annoyingly over-prepared, right? We don't want to lose that time because, you know, people are going to be nervous. Some of our people are a little bit nervous too. So we just want to make sure everyone's comfortable. And that's a lot of things I've been telling people before they do interviews. You know, for the one position I've open right now, I was coaching people. I'm like, hey, listen, if you want to get on and test Zoom and an hour before the call just to make sure it works, I'm here for you. You know, here's some like tips that people are saying, but going back to kind of what Christina and I believe Jenna said too, is just about just be natural. You know, everyone's in kind of the same boat right now. So don't come into this. Yeah, the stakes are higher and you should be on and do well. But at the same time, like you don't have to recreate the wheel, have a special background, put on a suit or anything like that. I mean, we're all real people. We're all vulnerable at this point in time. So I just want people to know that. And I feel that's like disarming for them to a certain degree, so they can just come in and be themselves, you know, so.
Mo, round us out here before I go to our last couple questions. What's something that you guys have done well in the remote hiring candidate experience that you think others can steal from?
Thank you. It's a lot of what other folks have said, and people first would be the one mindset that I'd want to share. And the way we've broken it down is, again, echoing what other folks have said, ensuring that when you're interviewing folks, that you're letting them know it's okay to be comfortable. If their child runs in or something happens, let them know that that's all part of the process. And again, be vulnerable yourself, share what's going on in your background. And for us, we've broken down our structured interviews and provided more detail and depth so that not only are we clear on what we're looking for, the signals that are needed to meet the goals and deliverables. But we're also extending the timeline. So at the virtual paired on-site interview stage, we generally have 3 paired interviews. And the goal for those virtual sessions are to connect with various members of the team so that you have a balanced view of our organization. Rather than having all of that in one day, we allow you to spread it out. So you can have your virtual on-site could go 2 or 3 or 4 days as needed so that you can handle the things that you're doing, as well as support your family and potentially be working. Outside of that, the one thing that I like to highlight is that I'm proud of the fact that we focus on representation. Throughout our pipeline, we've been actively engaging folks in underrepresented communities. We're building something for the US, something that's going to have a long-term effect. So it's important for us to have representation within our teams so that we can build something that our communities need. So I'm very proud of the fact that we've doubled down on that and that we're continuing to scale and grow with representation top of mind.
Let's actually keep there and Mo, maybe start with you, but others may have voices. We got a few audience questions here under a similar theme of exactly that. How do DEI initiatives not take a step down, but if anything, use this as an opportunity? And to add a tag here, I see Michael Miniman also adds, how could that include people who are differently abled? Any of you guys thinking about how virtual or remote hiring can strengthen your existing DEI initiatives rather than take a back seat?
Yeah, I'll start. As you mentioned, and I mentioned this earlier, that we're partnering with Newcraft, and what they're doing is providing remote apprentice, which can be anywhere from interns, but we're focused on underrepresented communities that we're engaging with. And recently we've connected with a few folks in various organizations that are focused on enabling individuals that have limited mobility to find employment that works. And I think what's phenomenal about the current disposition, albeit gloom, is that we have an opportunity to test out this big experiment of how productive you can be at home. And that will allow access for other folks that may not be able to go to an office. And one of the core things, I think, in terms of momentum, typically organizations, if you want to open up an office in New York, you do it. If you want to go to DC, there's this way of being where we believe we should just keep growing and opening up co-locations because that's what you need to do to succeed. But with this remote experiment, organizations are discovering that might not be the case. You may be able to do what GitHub has been doing and other organizations like Zapier that are 100% remote and still make that impact. And if you're able to do that, then you allow for more representation, folks that can't leave because of responsibilities or folks that do not want to. And you're touching talent that's across the US or globally that you would not generally have access to.
Others on that, Rachel, you're unmuted. Other folks who have thoughts on how that's improving, not weakening?
Well, I think one of the first comments I made is that I think this is a time to be even more intentional about unconscious bias and about building an inclusive environment. We've talked that this adds a whole new complexity to how do we interact with one another. And so making sure that as leaders in an organization, we're building inclusive ways of communicating with one another. Some people aren't as chatty as myself. I love to hear myself talk, but and need other ways to communicate. So whether it's a chat box, but making sure that we're giving everybody in the organization an opportunity to have a voice is more important now than ever. And we're actually using this time. Again, we're a 3-year-old startup, and we've been running a million miles an hour. And so we're actually taking this time to really start building out more of an intentional DE&I strategy, looking at our demographic, looking at the trends that we've had across the past 3 years in hiring and seeing where we have opportunities. So it's actually a really exciting time for us, I think, in terms of our diversity and inclusion.
That's fantastic. Others want to add that, Christina?
Yes, no, I think I'd have to agree with so much that we've already heard. If I think about it from like an attraction, a selection, and an on-the-job kind of categories, I think in terms of attraction, so much of what we've been doing has already thankfully been kind of online, various communities, joining, groups like this and things like that. So I think connecting people with information, communities, So thankfully, I think some of that was already underway, and there's some infrastructure there that we can all leverage, and leverage that even more so. So I think that's definitely helpful. In terms of the selection process, I think this goes back to what we said too, just in terms of being very, very aware of some people being more ready, more prepared to do online video. And that's not what we're hiring them for, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that comes up during interviews. What are we actually hiring them for? If they're going to be doing this all the time every day, then I hope they're doing well at it, right? Or we can get to that point. But what really matters and what doesn't? Is it distracting if you just can't hear them? It has nothing to do with the candidate, but and say like, you know what? Our connection is not good, and let's come back to it again, right? And the fact is, especially from a D&I standpoint, not everybody, we're a tech company, so everyone's going to be, fairly tech oriented, but not everyone's going to be, as comfortable, as savvy on that. They may feel comfortable in a different category. In terms of, success on the job too, right? So the whole attraction and selection process makes, such a big impact for that. I think this can really open up a lot of doors, right? To the whole point of like really testing our thinking about remote. Do you really have to go into the office every single day? Right? That actually, I think, limits candidates pools, especially DC metro area. The commute's horrific, right? If you can't come and go as you need to, right? If it takes you forever to get somewhere, if you've got childcare, if you've got other obligations, you've got doctor's appointments, any of those types of things. So I think things that could have held people back theoretically in the past may start to open up some additional doors here as well. And because we're not in person, we're relying on video and things and voice, and we're also relying on writing a lot more, even Slack messages or short or long form. I think that really helps people who need time to kind of collect their thoughts and prefer to write after collecting thoughts. So I think stylistically, Myers-Briggs types, all sorts of different things. I think it gives us a number of different channels, and people should choose the path that works best for them. Maybe they're speaking at an event. Maybe they're writing a blog. Maybe they're just, slacking in the office versus going to see somebody in person. So I think there's a lot of different ways in which we can interact with each other and be successful that this might help to unleash, so to speak.
That's fantastic. I'm a couple minutes over time. Maybe last question and a half, perhaps. One thing that came up in a few of the audience Q&A questions is about Joe, you alluded to the amount of applicants you suddenly get for the roles you have might change. 6 months ago, we were talking about employer brand marketing to make sure you're getting people who are in for your company values. Now, maybe you're trying to do that surely to find the best, most effective way to cross folks off who are not the right fit. I wonder if any of you guys have any insights about what new efforts are you using to qualify that top of the funnel faster? Tips that other hiring managers could take and job seekers could understand. Anything you guys are doing differently to qualify folks? Joe, you're on mute. Is there anything that you guys are doing differently for that role you're hiring right now?
Not necessarily, no. To me, every job has kind of the same motions as far as kind of a staffing professional would go about them. So there's no significant changes there. Kind of going back a little bit to some of the DEI type conversation. We are, that's something we've been working very, very hard on the past year and being conscious of that. So that is definitely something that we worked into this current position. And to me, that's always more of a, get out in front of your expected funnel to a degree. What I mean by that is I know if I post a software engineering job on my careers page today, probably by the end of next week, I have a pretty good idea what the demographics might be. But what do we do to make sure we're getting more people in, whether it's working with third-party specialty groups, getting advice from our internal ERG groups that we're building and things like that, just trying to make it more of a community effort to spread the word that we do want to be a diverse type company. Because that stuff can't just stop even during the pandemic. That's never going to go away. And I think one thing that I think some people don't realize when they're trying to get into those groups is you just can't be the new kid on the block and just say you do this and that and just come in and buy your way in. You have to be around and help them develop the content and get your groups involved. So it truly is part of the culture. You're not just buying the membership and they're okay, great. Well, yeah, they're a diverse company because they're a part of this group. So it takes a lot more than that and investing in it. So that would be something that I would kind of tell people.
We got to go. So I want to give everyone the last quick word to run out on. Joe, I'm putting you on the spot, but everyone's getting this to say goodbye with. When is your team going to be back in the office as much as you were in January? Summer, fall, 2021, or never?
I would say midsummer at best.
Okay. Mo?
we're going to be abundantly cautious. So we're going to hold off until it's absolutely necessary and until our people are safe. I do want to add though that we are running an experiment where we are actually reviewing applications that are submitted within a certain time, within 20 minutes, by connecting with a global network of recruiters and sourcers. So if anyone wants to learn about that, feel free to reach out to me offline.
No, drop your email in the comments. Jenna, summer, fall, next year or never?
Ideal would be summer, but similar to Mo, like we need to wait and see what it looks like from just a safety standpoint in the community. Our warehouse team is continuing to work, but it's our office staff team, tech, sales, account management, that's unable to be geographically co-located. Ideally, like I said, if the Maryland continues to reopen, that would allow us to do so in the summer. We are opening a new location and headquarters, so that would be great to put our team in it. But if we can't, then we won't do that, and we'll do it as soon as we possibly can.
Christina, summer, fall, next year, never?
Abundance of caution, as certainly as everyone is. We do anticipate that it'll be a transition period. We are expecting that at some point we'll have the office is open and you are permitted to come in, and recognizing again from a D&I and everything else standpoint, it's not going to work for everybody. So it allows us also kind of like a slow pilot, and also gives people just a lot more space. So one of the things that we feel probably most strongly about, sadly we don't know the date, right? At the same time, to understand that, kind of opening it up and letting it kind of have a slow roll, test and learn, and allow a lot of personal optionality in that is certainly what we're thinking at this stage.
Fantastic. Rachel, send us out. Summer, fall, next year, never.
Very similar to Christina, we are going to have a transition period. So we're going to have kind of voluntary in the office when it's open. So probably actually mid-May is when Colorado has said we can go back into the office, but with extreme social distancing practices and 100% voluntary, and still with the idea that most of us will be working from home. And
who would have thought that our human resource professionals are being cautious? Thank you, friends. That was this channel. Everyone gets a break. Come back at noon. We have our realist startups, which are the fastest growing under 3-year-old companies that we're tracking it technically. We'll be talking to 5 of the most interesting founders that we know about how COVID has changed their lives. Thank you, everybody. Recaps will be on technically next week. We'll see you back in a few minutes at noon. Thanks, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.